I ran away from home at 18. And the reason I did, I had wonderful parents. They were wonderful, liberal. I was brought up spiritual, not religious, but they were wonderful people. My mother was a school teacher. She wanted me to be a school teacher, so I'd have my summers off. Everyone I knew was Jewish. I would marry a doctor or a lawyer, and my life stretched out ahead of me. I knew there was something else. I didn't know what it was, but I knew there was a bigger world, and I knew that I belonged in it.
Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, possibility seekers. Thank you for joining us again. I have, as always, a phenomenal guest with me today. Her name is Judy Katz. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Judy Katz is a book collaborator, ghostwriter, publisher, and marketer. Along with obtaining literary agents and publishers for her authors, she helps promote their books to serve them as the ultimate reputation building tool. One recent project, A Question of Respect, Bringing Us Together in a Deeply Divided Nation, has garnered significant media attention and is a Wall Street Journal bestseller. To date, she has completed 60 books. A Holocaust memoir, Angel of the Ghetto, was award-winning and inspired a documentary. Judy also frequently gives talks by using books as the ultimate marketing tool or writing compelling memoir. She also writes byline articles intended to help change the conversation about aging, which I'm going to unpack today, which is a phenomenal conversation. Also, let me tell you a little bit more about her background. A graduate of UC Berkeley, Judy wrote a weekly column called Meaning's Edge in the Daily Californian for all 4 years. She later wrote for a medical ad agency and 2 McGraw-Hill Dimes, a director of special projects for the National MS Society. Get this, at the age of 65, Judy found her true calling when she began helping people become successful authors. Now 85, I know she looks like $1,000,000. Can you believe it? She continues to write, pursue her passion and purpose. Judy's on LinkedIn, Facebook. You can find her in all sorts of places. And she just wrote a little autobiographical book called From 18 to 84. There it is. And counting. One Woman's Blueprint for a Joyous Third Act. She co-authored Galaxy, The Healing Powers of the Rescue Dog with Jen Wilson. The book is in contract with Publishers Lyons Press. You can contact Judy in the show notes. I have her information all below. Welcome, Judy Katz. That was a mouthful.
Wow. Thank you. Who is that person?
You had a lot to say and a lot to do. And in the 85 years you've been on the planet, and you're still doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do want to help change the conversation about aging, because if you believe some movies and television, I should be a wrinkled up prune sitting in a wheelchair or with a walker, in assisted living or a nursing home. And not just me, and not just celebrities like Betty White and people like that, but rank and file people I know who are well into their 90s, who are still living full out, still being doctors, lawyers, business leaders, and authors.
No, I do. I think I want to lean into this conversation, not only because, I'm of a certain age as well. And you're going to
You're
be
an
like, well, yeah.
amoeba compared to me.
Yeah, I don't know about that, Missy, but okay. I'll give you the amoeba, maybe not.
People eyes are just seeing the land. You've got a long road ahead of you.
Well, I'm not going to address that exactly, but I'm going to say that I'm closer than you think. But the thing that I want to unpack is really what you said. And it's this preconceived idea that women of a certain age, and you can fill in the blanks, whether it's 60s, 70s, 80s, it doesn't matter, are limited. And I had a keynote last week, and I spoke about, I started this podcast, I was 59. I wrote my first book, I was 59. And that's a couple of years ago now. So like, why are people so afraid to do new things when they get past, or maybe they were always afraid to do new things? I kind of want to get your perspective on that.
Sure. Well, I've been writing since I'm age 11. And even though I went to the High School of Performing Arts, I thought I'd be an actress for 5 minutes. But I love writing. And I fell in love with writing when I read Guy de Maupassant in English, not in French. And I said, if somebody can take me into a little village in France and transport me there emotionally, mentally, psychologically, that I want to be able to do that with and for people. And so I started writing, and I think everything that I've done has been that basis. So the answer to your question is do something you love. And if you are not doing something you love, you're working only for money, and which many people do, maybe it's time to start finding something you love that you can do. And I don't care if you're 70, 80, 90. There are ways to do that. When I was 75, I met a billionaire and I started dating him. I have broken all kinds of records. I was the youngest PR director for Madison Square Garden, etc. Because if you tell me it can't be done, I just say, watch me. And I want everybody to have that kind of bold attitude towards life. And that's what I encourage in my talks.
Okay, so I people would assert that boldness, my words, be bold, be grateful, be intentional. People would assert that boldness is something you're either born with or not. I say not, but okay, what is your thought on that? Like, you've broken all sorts of records, you've been the only a lot. You've had 85 years of, practice of being the only. What does that mean for a woman listening to this podcast who's like maybe afraid to do something new?
I always say, fake it till you make it. I remember when I did my 4 years of columns that I wrote every week at UC Berkeley. I thought I would go back and get my own column on the New York Times. And this was 1970, let's say. And I went to interview for a job at a company, and they said to me, "Do you type?" And I was very smart because I'd still be in the typing pool if I said yes. So I said no, and they got me a job as a photo researcher in William Douglas McAdams, which was a medical advertising agency. And I was ballsy in those days. I stood, in those days, no technology. We had files of pictures. So what I was doing research was to pull out a headshot. It was so boring and so not worthy of me. And so I stood by the men's room every day. And when Harry Henderson, the head guy, came out wiping his hands, I'd say, "Harry, I can write, I can write, I can write." And finally, after a couple of weeks, I was only there a few weeks. He said, "God damn it, Judy, here's an assignment." So I'm up all night. I have no responsibilities except that. I write this one-page thing. Now I can't breathe. It's 5 o'clock. Everyone runs out, and I hand it to Hattie. And I wait outside his door, and he calls me in. And he did the kindest thing. I try to be as kind as this man was to me. He hands me back my paper. It's got blue pencil all over it. The first paragraph is now the third paragraph. He's fixed the headline, all of that, and I start crying. And he said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "I thought I was a writer." And he said to me, "You are. This is light editing." Well, it wasn't, but he made me an assistant editor, and everything happened from that. That was how I started a series of doctors with unusual jobs. And one of the jobs was doctor at the circus. And I did a big story on that uh, for a McGraw Hill magazine. And then I did doctor when Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier had a fight. I was sitting ringside with 25,000 people at Madison Square Garden. And I did a story, and Irving Mitchell read the story, and he said, "Who is this person?" And that's how I came to Madison Square Garden. So it was one thing that led to another. And frankly, I never stayed longer than 3 or 4 years in a job because every time I was in it, I learned everything. And also, I tell people under promise and over deliver. I would not wait for someone to give me an assignment. I'd look around and say, what can I do that's going to surprise people? And that's what I always did. When I worked for the March of Dimes, I started a readathon. I thought that was a good idea. I was just always trying to do things. And that's what I advise young women and young men to do is don't wait for directions. Look around, see what opportunities, see what's missing, and then do it. And that's what being bold means to me.
It's not necessarily what is said, it is what is unsaid and what is undone. So if you're intuitive and you're paying attention, you can't not even intuitive, if you're just paying attention, you've got common sense, you see where there's holes in an organization, where there's need.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to speak up. I just wasn't. I wasn't afraid to voice my opinion.
Now, where did that come from, do you think? Do you think that was born or made?
I ran away from home at 18. And the reason I did, I had wonderful parents. They were wonderful, liberal. I was brought up spiritual, not religious, but were wonderful people. My mother was a school teacher. She wanted me to be a school teacher, so I'd have my summers off. Everyone I knew was Jewish. I would marry a doctor or a lawyer, and this my life stretched out ahead of me. I knew there was something else. I didn't know what it was, but I knew there was a bigger world, and I knew that I belonged in it. So I packed up. I had $600 that I had saved my whole life from babysitting and camp counselor. And I had a little cardboard suitcase and I put a couple of change of clothes in and I just went to Port Authority and I got on a Trailways bus. I didn't tell my parents until 3 days later. And that is a big regret that I have. They were really frightened and I did apologize many times and everything was fine years later. But I got on a Trailways bus and I wound up in Westwood Village in California. And I had very high grades. So I was immediately accepted at UCLA, but I didn't like it. I didn't go there because it was too big. I didn't like the village. And I heard about this place called Berkeley, UC Berkeley. And so I went there and that was remarkable. It was just my people. And that's where I kind of blossomed.
Right. I mean, it does take a certain amount of boldness and balls.
It was desperation. Sometimes you see your life stretching out a certain way. No, that's not your life.
Well, okay. Yes, I believe that. I believe that from I have an immigrant version of that story, right? I think that for me, I was committed to not having the life that my parents led
Right.
because it was too hard, right? It was too hard and it was people constantly underestimating you and undervaluing you and underpaying you and under everything. So I made a promise to myself that that would never happen to me. You were going to pay me what I was worth and you were going to give me the respect that I had earned. So I came from the place of I don't think so. But other people would, maybe that could have turned into a more victim mentality. I talk about this in my book. It's could it your circumstance could have landed very differently for you had you been a different human.
Oh, absolutely.
You could have said, "You know what? I'm gonna marry the nice Jewish doctor that my parents just introduced me to, and my life will be lovely, and I'll live here, and I'll do this, and will my" it's predictability, and maybe that's security and safety, and maybe that's not what you value, right? So, I think that's awesome. I want you to talk about your attitude of, I don't think I'll ever retire."
Okay. Well, first of all, a confession. I really have no hobbies. I, what am I going to do? Sit in front of my 75-inch TV and watch Netflix all day? But here's the thing. I love what I do. Think about it. I'll tell you how I became a ghostwriter if you like. But what I want to say is my mission, passion, and purpose in life is to hear people's stories. And then they tell me the book they think they want to write, that they think they should write, and I tell them the book they should write because I know better than them. And I don't mean that from ego, it's from experience, who their audience truly is for the hard lessons they learned in life. And when I'm right, they do real, and I'm usually right, they do very, very well. But it's so much fun. It's almost like therapy, and they they tell me things like the Holocaust memoir that became a documentary. He told me stories. He just wanted to finally tell the truth about what happened to him in the war. Horrible stories that he didn't want to take with him. And it took 2 years and we did a full of the ghetto. He took me to Poland with his family to Auschwitz. and Bergen-Belsen and Treblinka, and I saw things I never would have seen. And he was honored in his hometown of Szczecin in Poland, next to Białystok, for his book. And it was just an absolutely wonderful, there were things like this because my clients become my friends, become my family.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. I guess there is the idea of what is it the story that I wanna tell? How am I going to tell the story? Who is gonna help me craft the story? And then how do I get it out in the world? It's sort of there's different components to it. So what do you think makes a story? I'm not at the book level yet. I'm saying a story. What does a story need to have? Because I have a couple friends. I'm not going to call them out on the podcast, but I know they're listening, and they have some pretty cool stuff to talk about. Uh one of my dear friends was in a near well, she almost died. And she was in a very bad motorcycle accident and very, very, very bad, like critical for weeks. And she always talks about, "I wanna tell my story." And I say, "You should." And I think she's been toying with this idea for a while. And there are a couple of other friends who are like, "Oh, yeah, I should write a book." And one of them was like, it was head of HR for a very large company, and he's seen some stuff that would make your hair curl. And they all have this idea, "Oh, I really wanna get my story out." What is First of all, let's unpack this. What is a good story?
Sometimes people tell me about horrific things that happened to them. And what I say is, I'm really sorry that that happened to you, but it's good for your book. It's it's the phoenix rising. It people who are self-made, who came from not privilege. Although you could make a story out of that. Somebody who was a billionaire's child and is helping the world in different ways from their origins. But most people that I work with have come from very difficult situations. And sometimes it's a life threatening illness, an accident, the death of someone you loved, abuse as a child, all kinds of things. And I think people read books to learn something and they want to learn, how did this person, if this person could do that, maybe I could do that. So how did they do that? And that's what people want. So that makes a good story. But one of the things that I do with people is a 2-hour developmental session. And they tell me their story and I listen in a certain way, listen for not just sympathetically, but also what's the market? Who's going to listen to this? Who needs to hear this? How can I get them on the big, I also have a PR arm. So I get people on all the big shows and podcasts and speaking opportunities, TEDx talk. How are we going to do that for this person? What are they saying? And by the way, uniqueness. There is no unique story. Shakespeare cornered the market. Long as we need reminders, human beings need to be reminded again and again of what we're capable of. And whether it's a business book, a memoir, I also work with people on what is called a roman à clé. That means a book with a key, meaning a true story that's been changed to fiction to protect the guilty. And those do very, very well. Because sometimes people have a story they want to tell, but they can't, you know, destroy other people. So we change a lot of things, but they tell their story.
What do you think is holding women specifically back from writing either books about their lives, books about stories that they wanna get out there, or just really doing something new?
When I give talks, I tell the audience there are 4 categories of people that I'm looking at. And the first are people who think they want to write a book, but they're kind of paralyzed. They are not sure if anyone's going to be interested in their story. Is it sufficiently unique or unusual? And do they have the writing chops? So they're doing nothing, but they think they want to write a book. That's number one. Secondly, people who started writing a book, they wrote a couple of chapters, maybe they have a table of contents, but now they're paralyzed because they don't know if it's any good. They don't know who to show it to. They're kind of embarrassed. And so it's sitting in a drawer. The third are people who have an entire manuscript and now they're ready to do something with it, but they're not sure how to get an editor, how to get, get it to a publisher or a producer or or an agent, literary agent. And so they have a manuscript that's sitting there and they don't know what to do with it. And the fourth category, congratulations, they have a published book, whether it was self-published, which is on a whole nother discussion, or traditionally published with a publisher size. It's on Amazon and it's sitting there lying like a lux. Nobody's buying their book and they don't understand what to do next. And I tell them, now I'm going to answer every one of you and tell you what to do if you're in that circumstance. So your question is, why do women in particular? I think that it goes back to self-confidence. They feel, yeah, maybe I'm not good enough, but you are. You are. But it doesn't hurt to work with somebody like me or an editor. But I always tell people, don't show your manuscript. If you have a manuscript or part of a manuscript, don't show it to anybody you sleep with because they're not going to tell you the truth.
Yeah, that doesn't have skin in the game or isn't afraid to hurt your feelings.
Exactly, exactly. Because you want constructive criticism. You don't need somebody to blow smoke.
Hmm. And how do you I'm very that whole process of the 4 types of people, they come from different places and they have different needs, but I it's interesting that you can kind of meet them where they are.
Well, because my talks are how to become a best-selling author, how to write the book you were born to write, things like that. So I get all four of those tiers of people, the ones who are haven't launched yet, the one who have partially written, and the ones who have written but the book's not moving. And I tell people what works, what doesn't work, and how to fix it. So people call that game changing, because I'm not saying I'm always right or holding myself up that way, but I've been at this game for a long time. You want to go to a heart doctor who's done thousands, not the one who's starting out with you, right?
Don't guinea pig my heart. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's funny. So what do you think the worst career advice you've ever been given has been?
Become a teacher and have your summers off, you know? I don't know. And then the people say stay at a job for many years. No, no. Why?
So I agree with you, but I wanna have the audience understand why you say that.
The visiting fireman is the one who gets the accolades. When you're the new person, when you've been in a company for a number of years, they start to take you for granted. So you're not going to get the big raise. Every time I went to a new place, I got more money.
So the idea that the newer generation, so our generations had very much that stay and grow and then, the first layoff, you're dead. But anyway, or the second or third or fourth. The idea that the newer generations are very much about self-actualization and they're very clear what they will and will not do. Now we can take a positive or a negative approach to that, but they do self-advocate, which I think our generations did not. They're very clear about what they will and will not do. Sometimes almost too clear. I'm like, "We are running a business here. We are running a business and you are an employee." So there's a framework that we will need to work within. And at the same time, I don't think, they have the preconceived idea that they need to be at a company for any X amount of years.
So I had a client coming up to my home office, and I had a graduate of Columbia master's in creative writing sitting there working with me among other people. And I said, I have a client coming up. Would you mind? The place was would you mind straightening up a little? She said, sure. She took a coffee cup, put it in the sink, and went back to her computer. Layla, who's from the Dominican, he's been with me 12, 15 years now. She made the beds, she made a snack, she vacuumed, she cleaned up the whole house, put everything out. I mean, it's not a servant mentality, it's a service mentality. And she doesn't even usually even need to be asked. She just does things, and the difference is palpable. So I'm not down on this generation. I think that there is an inherent something that they don't always go that extra mile.
Yeah, so I think your point is it goes back to what you said before, show up curious. Show up trying to add value where you see that there's an opportunity. It's the same whether you're cleaning up and making the space, the environment more inviting, or you're cleaning up and making a company more efficient.
Right.
You're showing up with contribution.
Exactly. Exactly. And when you don't have to be asked, when you look around and you come up with ideas and you're confident enough or bold enough, maybe you're scared, oh my God, the big boss is going to think I'm, you know, too big for my boots, but do it anyway. What's the worst thing that could happen? Especially when you're younger, you can get another job, but usually they're not going to fire you. They're going to think, hmm, this is somebody to watch, and that was the principle that I operated on. And I never, I'm just saying this, I never asked for a raise, never, because they gave it to me. And at one point in one of my big jobs, when half the staff was let go, I was not. And I don't say that to brag. I say that because I made it my point. Like I was working at one point, I worked for Downstate Medical Center. I was doing some PR in the early days. And I went up to the roof of the building and they had a sow, a 500-pound pig that had just had piglets. And they had all kinds of animals. They were farm animals they were studying, not cruelly. The New York Times and the Daily News came in and did major stories on a farm grows in Brooklyn. And TV came. Nobody in all those years had ever thought to make a story out of what was happening on the roof of the building. But I walked around. I was looking for stories. Then I found a student that had needed liver transplant, a medical student. I mean, and so that became a big newspaper story. I was just always looking for these things. I wasn't waiting for somebody to put it on my desk and say, "Do you want to write about this?"
Yeah. So it's funny because the entrepreneurial spirit, the self starter, the notion of finding opportunity to add value, I believe is a trait that we can develop, but we're typically born with it.
I think there's something to that.
It's the idea of also that you pointed out the service mentality, not servant mentality, and I think that there's a servant leadership kind of thing where you're helping people be better at what they do. And I think I wanted to ask you what's the best career advice you ever got?
Well, I'll tell you with a metaphor. Okay. So this is a labubu. These dolls that they sell, and this is a lafufu. Now, sometimes this is an imitation of this. So sometimes people tell me I'm expensive compared to some other ghostwriters or whatever. I I think that so I say to them, well, look, a Timex tells time and a Rolex tells time. With guys, I say you can get there in a Ford or you can get there in a Maserati, but it's a different ride. Everyone deserves to ask the price they think they're worth. But I tell them, you can get the labubu, the genuine, or you can get the lafufu. Sometimes they go to the lafufu, but they come back to the labubu. So this is just one of the props.
Yeah, no, I get the point. I'm much more inclined to go in the Maserati than the Ford personally, but yes.
They both get you there, but it's a different route. And I think that you should always think that you are, you know, the top of the line, that you are the Rolex. And I always tell women that too when they're dating online and things like that. I say, just remember, you're the prize. You are the prize. And I love to teach young women how to find a man.
Oh, do tell. Oh, let's do that. Come on, let's go.
It's the mirror. And when I say the mirror, men are very insecure in general. So and I understand why. So they have to function, they have to be aggressive, they have to all the parts have to work, and that's hard. So, especially as you get older. So I think at any age, if the mirror that you hold up, and I don't mean BS, I mean for real, are things you admire about him and you make him feel good about himself, he'll follow you anywhere, anywhere, because he's addicted to feeling good in your presence. And if you can do that, you can have any guy you want. But that's it. You have to take your ego out of the picture. So if you read my book, there's a chapter on how I dated Cary Grant for a year.
Oh my
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, I looked like this the day I met. So no,
God.
that's okay. You know what? There's a lot of loss in aging and there's a lot of gain. So it's a cost benefit thing.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So the mirror, that's a very interesting thing to unpack. The idea of you're amplifying what is the good in the human that you're with.
You see it. Just like I am able to pull out the life lessons from people so they can put it in their book, the same way, if you can find things to genuinely admire in somebody and they can feel like a hero. There are some guys who are so successful in business, and it's a joke, but seriously, they come home and they're not respected. They just like Jackie Mason said, "Don't sit there. Why are you sitting there?" No, people, men and women both want to feel admired, respected, seen and heard. And so many people, I call it's called level 5 listening. Level 5 listening is, and you can look this up. I didn't make it up, but it's where you hear things people are not even saying. You really get them. Level 1 listening is you don't even really listen. You're waiting for your chance to say your thing. Oh, you know that person. I know that person. Oh, no, no, no. You're trying to impress the person. That is the worst kind of listening. It's not real listening. And then there are levels of communication. But when you get to level 5 listening, it's a different way of being with another person. And that's what I try to do with people. And that's what I try to teach people. There are people who are incorrigible. They just have no self confidence and they have to tell you what they know and they have to impress you and they just can't stop. So, not everybody's coachable in this life.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. We're going to talk off camera as to what I just did with an uncoachable human. Yes, so that's interesting. I love that. And I think the word that I want to underscore when you say, meeting people and it's the genuine.
No, but when they do something, you show admiration. Wow. Oh my God, really? And then say more about that. Yeah, exactly. Genuine.
So if you had the opportunity to speak to your 30-year-old self, your 30-year-old Judy, what would you tell her?
This may sound funny, but one of the things I was never concerned about when I was young was money. I mean, I did well comparatively, got nice salaries and all of that, but I wasn't putting money away. And I have no complaints now. Towards later in life, I started accumulating and then I sold my apartment. So I did okay. I'm not complaining. Believe me, I'm blessed. But I wish I had been more aware of the power and need for money in older years and put more aside because there are some things I would like to do. I'd like to help animals. I'd like to help girls and women who are being sex trafficked. All right. There are cancer research. I mean, for one thing, and then maybe I'd like to have a house in the country. Who knows what? I mean, but I would tell younger people start putting some money away. Don't spend it. Just like when I emptied my 3-bedroom, 3-bath terraced apartment, I had so much stuff and nobody wanted anything. And I wound up, with getting rid of stuff, giving it away, donating. I sold a few things. The point is, who needed that stuff? Who needed it? I was so busy when I traveled all over the world, I would bring back souvenirs. Why? Just have the experience. Enjoy yourself. Nobody needs that thing on their refrigerator.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you, Judy Katz. That was really, really fun. I appreciate your time and your spirit. Yeah, I think I'm going to put in the show notes how people can get in touch with you and unpeel their stories and get them out into the world. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
If they mention you, I will give them 20 or 30 minutes free consultation, and I'll tell them what book they should write.
Ooh, I love that. Okay, we'll put a promo at the bottom, and we'll call it a free consult with a consultation with Judy Katz. You are a rock star. This is what we want us to aspire to when we are 85. I'm sure you agree with that. Thank you so much for joining, and make it a great day. Thank you so much for listening to Possibilities with Monique de Maio, where we unpack life as a female mover and shaker. If you like the show, please consider liking it, or better still, subscribing to it and leaving us a rating. It truly does help. Also, you can pick up my book, The 7 Secrets to Creating a Life You Love, a practical guide for women in leadership. You can find the book, other episodes of this podcast, and how to stay in touch at moniquedemaio.com. DEMAIO. I look forward to seeing you again soon. With gratitude, Monique.